Welcome in to the Hot Read Podcast. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined, as always, on this Tuesday afternoon live recording by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you?
What up? What up? I'm good. Coming in today with a big show for us, kind of planting our flag officially a week out before the Titans have to make their official 53-man cut down. Obviously, you know, things could change, but this
What
is where
could
we're
go
gonna
wrong? We're gonna get them all right today.
What could go
and
wrong?
It's gonna be
It's gonna be perfect. Yeah, we're both coming into this. I haven't seen your list. You have not seen mine, but I'm confident that because we are both the smart and intellectual people that we are, we got it correct, and we have the same exact list because it is the correct one.
Right, the geniuses that we are. I double checked my list. It is in fact a 7-day early preview of the final list. I sent it to Ran. He said, "Yep, that's the one." So we're good as long as your list matches my list. And for folks that are listening with us today, if you want to know who doesn't make the team, I'm about to tell you. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to take a look at my pre-training camp list, which as I looked at it today for the first time since we did it a couple weeks ago, there's some funny stuff on there. It's mostly right. It is, but there's some funny stuff on there. And we're going to go through some of the more, in all seriousness, difficult positions to project because there are some very obvious things. Most things are very obvious to me. There are like 6 or 7 spots that really you could tell me they go any way, and I would probably believe you because it gets tricky there at the bottom. We got some big news, by the way. The reason why we're a little bit late today is because our buddy Zach Lyons. I don't know if people are paying attention to this. JT and I were sitting watching. He was just like moments ago announced as the newest host over at 104.5 here in town. So clap it up for Zach. Very exciting.
Let's go, Dada. Let's go.
We've known that JT and I have known this has been in the works for like almost a month now, but did not know until today that it was official. So very exciting. Very cool. He's going to be the Blaine and Zach show in the afternoons. He is taking over as the co-host of Blaine it was Blaine and Mickey. He's replacing Mickey essentially. And so that's super cool. He's going to do Titans Talk Back, it sounds like, which is the 104.5's post-game show. So not here to advertise 104.5. You should listen to us instead of 104.5. But if you do listen to 104.5, you should tune into our buddy Zach because we support Zach. We support the intellectual media movement here in Nashville. You know, those of us that really put in the work, really know what they're talking about, that come from long-form backgrounds such as the 440 Podcast Network and Broadway Sports Media. You know, it's me and JT, Zach, Stoney, Mike Herndon, and those types. We're a close-knit group, and we support each other, and that's because we know what we're talking about. And there are some others out there that I think are empty calories. We are the protein shake of media, JT, and we like when we win, so this is exciting.
Yes. You know that meme? I don't know. This may be too Gen Z for a lot of people out here, okay. But you know the one that's been floating around the
internet,
the interwaves recently, where it's like, let's go gambling. Oh, dang it. You know that one?
yeah.
It's the opposite one where he's like, let's go gambling. And then it just starts saying, I can't stop winning. I can't stop winning. That's the intellectual. And that's the
We're
intellectual
going to win so much
right now.
You're going to say, Mr. President, please. Too much winning.
Obviously, no, it's awesome to see him get that. It's going to be wild to hear him on the post-game show.
Frankly,
afterwards.
It took him a while. You know, he's 47 years old. You'd think you'd have had a better media post by now because he's been doing it for long before you and I were born. But good for him. You better late than never. Congratulations to Zach Lyons for getting there. That is had to get a little something in there. Okay. Let's get on with our show here. And for those of you that are with us live here in the comments, we appreciate you being here on a Tuesday afternoon. We would love your thoughts, your comments, your questions as to where we went wrong, where you think we went wrong, where you're actually incorrect, but what you're incorrect about, basically. We'd love to hear about that in the comment section as we go through the Titans 53-man roster today. No idea how long this is going to take. This might be a shorter show, but usually when I say that, it ends up going 97 minutes. So I won't say that today, but I will allude to it. If you're with us live, make sure you're watching with us over on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Head on over to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream. And in the comment section, that is where you can be a part of today's conversation. Make sure you're liking and subscribing over there. We are looking to continue to bolster our media presence on the internet. And make sure you're following us at Hot Read Pod on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. JT, without further ado, should I just throw up my old list and we can look at where we were as of, I have no idea. What this would be like. We did this July 20-something. Sounds about right?
Like right before, like right as camp started. I think it's a good place to start, you know.
Yeah, I don't. It's somewhere in there. So I
it's
think
definitely you want to see where you were before you go. You look to the past to get to the future. I think so.
That's right.
Let's see what we had cooking up there all the way back in July, which seems like an eternity ago. But
I'm gonna go find it. It was July 19th. So we are live on July
wow.
18th. So it was 6 days before I, unbeknownst to me, would have a child. And we are now. So it's a full month, over a full month ago, a month and change. So I'll go ahead and throw that up here. And here it is in this very high tech Google sheet for you to look at. Everything. So in blue, here's the color code for folks that are wondering. The blue is guys that I had no doubt were going to make the team. Green were guys I think we're going to make the team. Red, guys to get cut. And then, of course, we've got Colton Dowell here in purple because he's going to be on the PUP list. Quarterbacks, Levis and Rudolph. Wasn't wrong there. You run to the first funny mistake where Dylan Johnson was the third running back. I was not on the team much longer after we did this.
Can we talk about that real quick, though? No, I think
he made it to August.
He might have barely made it into August, but then again, that is something that needs to be discussed. After getting cut by the Titans, he's picked up by the Carolina Panthers, goes on to have 13 carries for 50 some odd yards and a touchdown, and then gets cut immediately after. What are we missing with Dylan Johnson? Because for all intents and purposes, it sounds like he's a pretty productive running back, in my opinion. And I thought that's what we thought. All of us thought that coming out, and he was a pretty popular pick to win that RB3 job, and he's just bounced around already and had a rough start to his NFL career. So, it's frustrating. It's confusing, but it's definitely one of the ones I look back on this list right here and I feel like might have got that wrong.
Yeah, I think it's medicals. I think it has to be medicals because otherwise I don't know. Maybe he's just got a hateable face. Otherwise I have no idea why.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, there was, and not to spread rumors, but the things that I was hearing, whether they were substantiated or not, around the draft cycle in the spring was that the reason why he's likely to go undrafted after such a big year at Washington were some medical things. And so that wouldn't shock me. Not to go back in the podcast too far, but I just saw this from Glory Day Sports and it deserves some praise. I've always said 440 and Broadway Sports Media is the chicken parm of Titans media. All the calories. Yes, 100%. Glory Day Sports knows what he's talking about. Okay. And then I had the right 6 wide receivers too. We know Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks were locks, still are locks. I probably should have just sacked up and said NWI was a lock at the time because it always was NWI. And then Jaquan Jackson is my 6th guy. I will talk about what my new list looks like, but I think that wasn't crazy at all. Had the right 3 tight ends. We still believe those are the 3. O-line. I'm not even going to dive into what this O-line group was. It's largely the same with some things shaking around. You might notice one guy that's now retired in that list. Don't worry about that. Couldn't have possibly known. Defensive line, you've got 6 guys that aren't crazy. Edge, I was wish casting the Thomas Rush training camp of all training camps. It did not come to fruition, so that's a little bit of a bummer. Linebacker, we'll talk about that. Another really interesting group. We'll talk about that. Cornerback, I was also wish casting the Caleb Farley Renaissance, and then he got hurt shortly thereafter, so that's a tough one. And then safeties, of course, did not know that Quandre Diggs would become a Titan between then and now. Okay, so all of that looking back, it doesn't look nearly as bad as I thought it would. Really, the only glaring thing, unless we get unless something crazy happens a week from today when they cut down next Tuesday at 3 p.m. local time, for folks that are wondering, that's when it'll be official. But you'll have folks like Justin Mello leaking the lists all day long. I don't think it's that bad. I think Dylan Johnson's the only hilarious bit of this. I don't think I included anybody else that has no shot of making the team. Well, besides Sadiq Charles, but it's not his fault. He would have made the team, but then he decided to quit football. Okay. On to my current list. Here's the current list. And we're also going to do some practice squad. And JT, you have a list as well that we're not going to show it because it'd be too many lists at once, but we will cross-reference it. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit. Oh yeah. Look at how that's much better. Let's just do that over here so the folks can see at home. I don't have the Titans keeping Malik Willis on the roster. And we've talked about this. Would it shock me? No, if Malik Willis ended up making the final 53. But we know Levis and Rudolph are locks at this point. We talked about it at length on the last show. Rudolph is your quarterback too. Always was. With Willis, he falls into that. This is going to be a recurring theme all show. All the guys that I have on the practice squad, which is in yellow, fall into that charity guy category where I would not be shocked to see them make the team because, again, when you get to roster spot 44, 45, 46, it becomes a who wants to join this team situation. You're just kind of handing out golden tickets. It has less to do with guys like, we've got to have him on the team. He's really going to turn into something. It's a lot of flyers and security guys and just who you're a fan of currently. So is this what you had, JT? Do you have the Titans keeping 2 or 3 quarterbacks?
So I agree with you. I think coming off of the conversation that we had last week or post the second preseason game, talked a lot about how it really just feels like Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are the 2 guys that they would keep. Obviously, it's a discussion of risk versus reward, keeping Malik Willis on the practice squad. However, like from what we've seen,
what's
from
the
him,
real risk? Can we talk about what the real risk?
That's the question I was going to pose there. Besides, and this is an interesting discussion, I think that's been brought up early this week, besides the maybe a little bit of a fan attachment to a guy like Malik Willis, who, was talked up so highly before being drafted in the 3rd round, kind of in that in-between space for the Titans the past couple of seasons. A lot of fans kind of have this connection to him because he's also a really stand-up guy. Is a solid guy off the field as well as on the field. But, I don't really see a downside of keeping him on the practice squad because, like you said, that 3rd emergency backup quarterback rule is something that really, isn't that big of a deal. Like, once again, you do not have to have the quarterback on the active roster before game day. He can be on the practice squad and can be a game day elevation at no other cost, but he has to be on the game day roster, right? So,
Correct.
So that's not something that, is incentivizing them keeping him on the active roster, the 53-man. But like we said, just the performance from Malik Willis the past couple of weeks, although improved, doesn't show much in the confidence category, in my opinion, to say that this guy is deserving of this spot when you have so many other depth positions that you might as well keep a couple other guys.
Yep, we're on the same page. So I think we can move on from what is ultimately the least. I don't think anybody's really questioning this at this point. Again, will it be shocking if Willis gets in? No, but I'll be surprised as to who gets left out instead of him. On to running back here. We talked about this at length on Tuesday's show. Spears and Pollard, obvious locks. I might be kicking myself a week from now for not just going ahead and locking this in with Julius Chestnut. And I said on Tuesday that it's a lock. I feel that it is. You know what? It's time for me to put my money where my mouth is. I'm changing it to blue. For the record, let the record show. Julius Chestnut, a lock to make this team. I said it on Tuesday. I need to reflect it with my sheet here. I think Chestnut is your running back 3. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. Of the 3 guys vying for that last spot, I don't know how you can argue any of the other 2 guys. That was a terrible sentence. Let's start that over. I don't know how you can argue that the other 2 guys offer you more than Chestnut in the actual running game. In fact, I would argue Chestnut is the only one of the 3 of them that does offer anything in the running game. With Haskins, all of the upside of special teams. If special teams, if they change the kickoff rule to just no more kickoffs, we're just going to give teams the ball. Hassan Haskins would probably be out of the NFL. Like I don't see it. And then Jabari Small, again, a young player, did not impress at all in the preseason. Very much a practice squad body. I've been calling him the quintessential practice squatter, and yet I don't have him on the practice squad here. I have Haskins making the practice squad. Do you have any issue with this? Is this reflective of your sheet as well?
Yeah, so we're 2 for 2 here on our positions. I have Julius Chestnut as the 3rd running back. I have the Titans only keeping 3 running backs, and that comes down to, I believe that there are other positions on this team where they will keep guys who can serve as that special teamer role. Maybe not as good as Hassan Haskins, because Hassan Haskins might be the best special team guy that they may end up having, but because of the kind of inefficiencies of the rest of the roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think you have guys who bring that special teams upside and can also play on a side of the ball where you don't have like a Tyjae Spears and a Tony Pollard already like ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. I really have no more to say on this either. So you want to just move on? Let's just keep going, trucking along here.
Sure, let's keep
the receiver
along.
Position. Said it a week ago. I'm going to continue to say it. The Titans are keeping 6 receivers, and their names are DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Traylon Burks, Nick Wickrikene, and Jaquan Jackson. And Colton Dowell, technically, because he's on PUP. So shout out Colton Dowell, the only purple guy on here. We've beaten this one to death too, so I don't have much to say beyond the fact that, like I said on Tuesday, I'm still going to give it a 7.5% chance. I've neither increased nor decreased that percentage. A 7.5% chance they keep 7 receivers because they get to the bottom and just decide, Mason Kinsey, you're one of the more talented guys. We're going to keep you, especially in the wake of DeAndre Hopkins maybe missing a game or two. Will he be on the roster all year long when Hopkins is back and everybody's healthy? Maybe not. Probably not. But for now, week 1, week 2, let's get you in here. You'll start the year on the 53. I think it will be Mason Kinsey. I don't see any world in which it's somebody else. Here's the world in which it becomes somebody else eventually. Jaquan Jackson becomes your full-time punt returner, and he goes down to injury. I still then think it's Mason Kinsey because he's listed right now on their unofficial depth chart, which don't read into it, but he has this whole time been listed as the number 1 punt returner. I think he's their favorite option besides Jaquan. And then, depending on bigger body guys, like in a world in which you're missing DeAndre Hopkins and Traylon Burks to injury, which now that I said that out loud is disconcertingly possible, knowing both of their track records, maybe then you see somebody like
Kearis Jackson.
I was going to say Kearis Jackson
Oliver?
or Bryce Oliver. Yeah, I was like, should I say this?
If Colton Dowell comes back,
you may Colton Dowell. If he comes back, it might be Colton Dowell. That also might be a situation where they're looking to pick somebody off the waiver wire. Yeah, I don't know. I say all that to say, what is the track for Kyle Phillips to jump up onto the roster during the year? It's going to take like Tyler Boyd and Jaquan Jackson getting hurt, I think, for him to see the roster. That's how I currently feel.
I think so, considering that Kyle Phillips is already dealing with that nagging hamstring injury that he continues to have almost every single year, right? He's already starting off, even before the season, having an uphill battle, having to come back from that injury. And then, we've seen this time and time again. Once Kyle Phillips kind of has that hamstring injury, it tends to sometimes linger. And so, first of all, he would have to come back healthy and be available for him to even consider a spot on the roster, I think, at this point. And then, like you said, there are so many other moving pieces, I think, on this roster right now that would have to happen for him to bump up. Because we've talked about the different kind of roles that Brian Callahan has kind of divided this wide receiver group into. I ultimately, yes, which one do you think Kyle Phillips most definitely fits into? Like, which one does he thrive in out of the X, Z, Y, any of these kind of positions? Like, Kyle Phillips just doesn't feel like he truly fits any of those. And that's why it's hard for me to even find him a spot on the roster.
I think I'm more confident than you that he could be a functional direct backup to Tyler Boyd and be deployed in the same way offensively. I just don't think he can do anything else. And like with Tyler Boyd, you're not going to really move him outside, although in the past he's done it. So like he at least has some experience there. With Phillips, you're not ever moving him out of that slot role. So yeah, again, that's been the problem this whole time, right? He's so singular a player. He is so inflexible. It becomes really hard to find the right spot for him. And I like the guy a lot. And I wish, I've spent the last 2 years wishing nothing more than to watch Kyle Phillips tearing it up on a Sunday, Hunter Renfrow style. But much like Hunter Renfrow, that light burned bright in the right moment, a very brief moment in time. And then I don't know if this is the case with Renfrow, but then it becomes difficult for that to continue. So that might be a very flawed metaphor, but I think that's the case. And I think we can move on here to the tight ends. The first off the board move I've made really so far, I think in terms of Nashville consensus, is keeping 4 tight ends. Maybe even this is something people are starting to come around to. I've beaten this one like a drum. I think David Martin Robinson has acquitted himself well enough in the preseason, first of all, to be worthy of a spot. UDFA rookie who has been really impressive in camp, has come along very quickly. And maybe most importantly, in the actual games, both of their preseason games, he leads all Titans pass catchers, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. He leads them all with 5 catches and I think 68, 70 something yards. It's been really good. And even more impressive than his receiving prowess so far has been his ability to be that F move tight end, line up as the fullback, and be a key blocker, not just key blocker, but key and extremely effective blocker in the run game. He fits this run scheme really well. The second point, which I've said before, but I'll quickly reiterate, the Titans tight end room is bifurcated into Ys and Fs. The F is that fullback move tight end. The Y is that traditional inline tight end. And we know that Vanette and Wiley are going to be those Ys. We know that Chigakonkwo is the current F that's definitely on the roster. And if they only keep 3, they will only be 1 deep with F. They'll need Wiley or Vanette to be able to play. They need to be able to switch hit a little bit. And to look at the rest of the roster for what it's worth, are there other guys competing for F? A fair question. Well, Thomas Odukoya so far has been lined up primarily in the preseason games, at least, as the Nick Vanette Y replacement. He's been filling in for Vanette essentially in the depth chart. So he's been playing Y. And then Stylianos, I'm not going to sit and lie to the folks. I don't know what he's been playing. I don't think it's been F, but maybe it has been. So either his competition, DMR's competition at F, is either Chig and then nobody, or Chig and then Steven Stylianos, who, spoiler, Stylianos is not making the roster. Is this what you had, JT? And if so, was this one of the tougher decisions for you?
Yeah, so once again, I'm pretty chalk with you. I have DMR making the roster, mostly because, we heard from his offensive coordinator today, Nick Holtz, kind of talking to the point of DMR looked like a totally different player when the pads came on, and he showed us something that we really didn't see in OTAs, and I think that's something that all of us can agree with. DMR has looked the role, and I think when all things are considered, having that 2-2 of both positions instead of just having Chig as one and then having to maybe have him kind of be able to be a little bit more versatile, that's something that I think is worth having DMR on the roster, being able to let both Josh Wiley and Chigakonkwo, for the most part, those 2 guys as the starters, do what they're doing best right now and play inside this role in Brian Callahan's offense that they've been really trying to perfect and create with this offense. And so having less on Chig or Josh Wiley's plate by keeping DMR, I think, is the right move.
Yep. I will say, of the 4 positions we've gone through, DMR being the 4th tight end is the first one we've come to. It's the first green thing I have on here. It's the first guy that if you told me he didn't make 53-man roster, I wouldn't actually be super shocked. I'd be surprised and disappointed, but not super shocked. I'm kind of glossing over the practice squad guys because we'll come back to that here at the end, who I think does and doesn't belong on the practice squad. But if you're curious, as you're watching along with us here on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, you can see them in yellow below. Okay. Let's just knock the O-line is such a big task, but let's just go ahead and knock it out. I have them keeping 10 offensive linemen. I think they're keeping either 9 or 10. I told JT earlier today, maybe because we keep talking about these charity guys, right? Like we get to the end and there needs to be 7 guys that fill some spots just based on talent alone. Maybe my hot take will be that by decree of Bill Callahan, they're just keeping all 17 tight offensive linemen. That's every charity guy is a lineman, and they're the first team in NFL history to roster 15 linemen on day 1. I don't think that's actually happening, but I wish it would, because like we said on Tuesday, I'm confident I'll get 3 or 4 of these wrong when we find out the real list on Tuesday. And I'm confident at least 2 or 3 of them will be linemen. Beyond the starting 5, which we know for sure, they're locked in: Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Petit-Frere, Radens. In that order, almost in that order, left to right. Flip Radens and Petit-Frere. Obviously, Radens your left guard, or right guard. Petit-Frere your right tackle. Beyond them, it's 5 guys that are all really similar. I think Daniel Brunskill is clearly the next one in terms of talent. Now, we heard Jim Wyatt earlier on 104.5 today, I think 3HL, talking about how he's heard around the building, this is the perks working for the team, of some potential surprise cut candidates. And I think the financials are the biggest thing we don't pay attention to when it comes to cut candidates, how much money the Titans stand to gain back if they don't keep a guy on the roster. A guy like Daniel Brunskill is one of those bigger-ish money, big is relative in this sense, but bigger-ish money guys and he's older. Wouldn't shock me if he's a surprise cut candidate for that reason. But if it's based on talent alone, I don't see how Daniel Brunskill is not on this roster. I think Andrew Rupchich, similar situation. They've continued to have him be in a direct battle with Dylan Radens at that right guard spot. Now, we've heard in really just the past couple of days that Radens has separated himself and is in position to be the starter. They've kind of gone ahead and winked and nodded and said, yes, this is the case. I don't think they're getting rid of the direct backup to him, or maybe their first swing guard in that sense. And then it gets hard. The next three guys, a real crapshoot for me. I'll briefly explain why I included the three I did, and then JT. Surely these aren't the same lists, right? You have different guys.
No, I do. This is where we
Okay,
probably
thank God. This
deviate
is going to
the
be so
most.
boring if we were just the exact same roster.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Latavius Simmons, Jalen Duncan, and Cole Spencer for different reasons. With Simmons, I think just based on watching practice and watching the game so far, I think that he has been the next best lineman. I think that he has looked overall pretty good in both of the preseason games. I think he may have been the best lineman out there, frankly, just top to bottom performance in the second preseason game against the Seahawks. So I'm including him. I think they like him. Jalen Duncan, to be honest with you, I'm including him simply because I think it comes down to you either keep Duncan or Ojukwu. I don't think they keep both tackles. And every time we've talked to Bill Callahan, he has made a point to bring up, that Duncan kid. I like that kid. I don't know. I'm not sure I necessarily agree personally, but I think Bill Callahan really likes him. I think between Ojukwu and Duncan, the reason Duncan got drafted and Ojukwu didn't is Duncan's the better on paper profile, has probably a higher potential ceiling. So I think they keep Duncan because Callahan likes him. And then Cole Spencer, another guy that I just think Bill Callahan likes, young upside, really the only young upside guy amongst these backups on the offensive line, who we know that Bill Callahan spent a lot of time pre-draft scouting, doing a lot of boots on the ground work on him. And he's looked pretty good in 2 preseason games as well. So the controversial guys I'm cutting, I guess, are Leroy Watson, who was brought in by Callahan, and Ojukwu, who started strong in camp, and then his stock has faded. And then I don't think anybody's surprised that Brian Dooley and Jerron Christian aren't making the roster. But can I guess who you had in and out, JT?
Sure. Yeah.
Surely they're very close. I'd imagine. I don't know. Do you have Ojukwu in and Spencer out?
I do not. So here's my list. So like you said, I have the same top 5 as it is. I have them keeping Daniel Brunskill once again, because even though according to Spotrac here, like you said, cap, is something that we haven't really considered. And if you're going by cap hit, Daniel Brunskill is the 17th cap hit on this roster. Okay. So, I mean, having him as a backup is not nothing for $3-something million.
Making this team now that we're considering this line of reasoning. Yeah,
I still think for what it's worth, though, he is a better option to be the backup center than a Corey Levin, or anybody
this is so
else.
Bad. I didn't even have Levin written on here. Sorry, Corey.
Well, Corey's going on the not making the team, I guess.
Yeah, but he deserves to be on here in red at the very. Show some respect.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, show Corey Levin some respect, even though they did re-sign him. This is why it's such a hard dart throw, right? Because. Right. Do you take into account that they re-signed Corey Levin in the at the beginning of camp? Do you take? But
Corey Levin, we know this about Corey Levin. They always he can't die. They just always go to him when they need a body, and this is how it goes everywhere with Corey Levin. He gets cut, then he joins back, and he gets cut, he joins back. He'll be back eventually.
I still think that they think Daniel Brunskill is the next best guy up to be that backup center behind Lloyd Cushenberry. So that's why I think they're keeping him.
So Andrew top 6 were the same.
Yes, Andrew Rupchitz, I have him on there as well.
The top 7 were the same.
He is probably their backup right guard behind Dylan Radins right now.
I think he's their number one swing guard. In general, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I think in terms of swing guys, I think number one backup at center is Brunskill. Number one backup at guard is Rupchitz. So I guess then it becomes, who do you think is their number one backup at tackle?
Here's where we get into an interesting discussion, because I'm keeping Leroy Watson.
Okay.
I'm keeping Leroy Watson and Jalen Duncan as my next 2. I have 10 as well. So I have Jalen Duncan and Leroy Watson. And then as my last one, you kind of separated him off, but I am keeping Jerron Christian for a different reason. One is that because I think that when you get down to it, and if they have a very hard-pressed, decision to make, Bill Callahan might go back on the historical
guys
that these are the guys he brought in. These are the guys that he knows has worked in the past, and in a pinch has helped Cleveland kind of stabilize that line. And so I know a Cole Spencer is a very interesting guy who has a lot of upside. I know Latavius Simmons has looked pretty good, but I'm taking a little bit of a different route when I was thinking about this, as in Bill Callahan looking at this. Okay, if we need a guy to go in, who is a guy that I've had in the past that has worked when I've had to call upon him in a pinch and be that guy to step up. Much Bill Callahan might like having a Cole Spencer come into the team here. Okay, well,
our buddy Stoney in the comments does not at all agree with you on the Leroy Watson.
And that's fair. Like I said, this is just my kind of my way of thinking. This is how I've really thought about this. Like you said, there are a million different ways. They could keep Brian Dooley for all we know. They could keep John Ojukwu for all we know. Like that's just where my mind went to, that if Bill Callahan needed a guy in the pinch, I feel like he might go with the historical success that he's had with other teams in the past.
Fair enough. And I don't begrudge you that at all. And that's why I'm not confident in removing anybody besides Levin and Dooley, just because I know that they're not Bill guys. So I get that.
So if I go to my practice squad,
so you got no Latavius Simmons, no Cole Spencer on your roster. Those are the differences, right?
Yes, I have Cole Spencer and Latavius Simmons, I believe, as my backup guys as on the practice squad.
Practice squad guys. Okay.
Yes.
All right, we'll revisit the practice squad situation in a little bit. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball here. And if you're with us live, we appreciate you being here on what is just a supremely nerdy, very tedious, the least broad audience we've ever catered to, I think, on the show is this right here. But you know what? Once a year, we're going to do it. So get over it. Defensive line, I've got them keeping 5. I think there are 4 locks here: Simmons, Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Keandre Coburn. I perceive from what I'm hearing and what I think and what I see, I think that those guys are for sure making the roster. And then I've got them keeping TK McClendon. I wouldn't be shocked that 5th spot being occupied by any of the 3 guys that aren't in red here. So we know Davidson is hurt and out for the year. Tough break for him. I think that he actually had a shot to make the roster before that, but McClendon, Easton, and Bohanna are all competing for that last spot in my mind. I lean McClendon in terms of where he's been rotated in practice and in the games. The one I'd be most surprised by is Easton, who I think has the most upside of the 3. And I've been impressed with him throughout camp, but he's young, he's raw. He screams to me a UDFA rookie practice squad guy. Let's give him a year. That's how I feel. Do you have them keeping 5, and do you have them keeping the same 5?
Yes. So I have them keeping 5. That's actually the last addition I made, kind of my last tweak. I had them keeping the 4 there, and Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Keandre Coburn. But then I kept continuing to look at that list, and I'm like, they just need depth there, because as much as I think those 4 guys could hold down the fort, the way they've kind of deployed some of those guys in practice and on the field, it feels like they are kind of rotating these guys in. So keeping a 5th, I think, is the option. I would not be surprised if they keep a 6th in Isaiah Easton or Quentin Bohanna. I've kind of said this half jokingly, but I think there is a reality where they like Quentin Bohanna enough to keep him on the 53 man.
I agree. I think there is a role where that happens.
In practice that has given me signs that says they might like this cat more than we think he's an actual person. Like, they might like him enough to actually take him off witness protection.
More than we are critical of his actual existence.
Correct.
Right.
And so I do have them keeping 5 right now. Like you said, I have them keeping TK McClendon. I think he's the guy that they've rotated in a lot more than the other guys. Isaiah Easton's an interesting guy to keep tabs on, like we just said with Quentin Bohanna. But coming down to it, I have those 4 guys and TK McClendon making that 5th spot.
Okay, let's move on here to the edge position. Another contentious situation. I've got them keeping 4, man. I think that you've only got 3 that are locks, and that's Harold Landry, Arden Key, and Jalen Harrell, the rookie. I've got to keep him Rashad Weaver, because I think well, first of all, they need 4. You have to have at least 4 edges. You can't just rock and roll with 3 into the season. That's not going to happen. I don't know. Before I give my thoughts, did you also have 4? Did you slide a 5th in there?
Nope. I have them keeping 4. And this was something that I think was pretty apparent to me in today's press conference with Denard Wilson, how he talked about that edge group. Not a lot of glowing things across the board for his edge group, kind of beating around the bush with coach speak. And that really,
I would say pretty clearly not a crazy fan, actually.
Yes.
I'd say it was, without saying it explicitly, he was like, yeah, there's some dudes in there. Of all the dudes that have ever played edge, those sure are some of them.
They keep Rashad Weaver just based on he's been here, and he hasn't had the greatest camp, but he has flashed in the past. Can they continue to work on him throughout the season? I think so. I think that gives him the edge over a Caleb Murphy, which there's been talk online about Caleb Murphy being better than Rashad Weaver and more deserving of that spot, and people think it's not entirely close. I'm almost the exact opposite of that opinion after what I've seen over 2 weeks. As much as like John says in the comments, they're so sick of Rashad. He's the known quantity that can help you in a pinch, and I think that's important with this group. The biggest thing, though, for me is how Denard Wilson today kind of said, with this edge group, we may look at rotating in some interesting, pass rush packages, and called out Jamal Adams by name. And that's kind of, I was flirting with the idea of keeping 5, but the fact that he continued to harp on this idea that Jamal Adams might as well just end up playing as an edge player and just blitzing the quarterback on a lot of plays and a lot of design looks tells me that they have enough everywhere, considering the linebacker room as well, that they probably don't need to keep more than 4.
Yeah, I agree. I think in their minds, they would like to get a 5th at some point, whether that's in season or right before. Like, I don't know what the plan exactly will be. But I continue to think that they'll be grinding the waiver wire, the cut wire when cut down day happens for another body. I don't see a 5th guy on this roster for sure to make that group. So only having 5 D linemen and only having 4 edge players allows for me to probably the most foolish part of my list. If I'm being 100% honest,
before
the
we
most
move on real
likely
quick, because we do have some comments here, like
sure.
In the comments saying hot take Caleb Murphy over Weaver. The reason why I think that Rashad Weaver,
did Mike Herndon log in as Kenneth Kroll? Is that what just happened?
The reason why I'm keeping Rashad Weaver over Caleb Murphy is that through 2 games, it's been apparent that Rashad Weaver looks like he knows where to be on a play, whereas Caleb Murphy continues to look lost out there. And I think if you're going to keep a 4th edge guy, you'd want the guy who has, has a few years under his belt, at least 2, and looks like he can play the part more than Caleb Murphy has. There was a lot of times in that second game where Caleb Murphy, just absolutely looked lost, was missing where the ball was going. Honestly, he was missing the run was going this way. Caleb Murphy went the exact opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's just not ready. And like, I get that he has some traits that gives him that upside. But like we said, if we're going into this discussion only keeping 4, I'm taking the guy who knows where to be on the field.
To elaborate on that, and as Stoney says here in the comments, 100% agree. We've got to hold Mike Herndon accountable. That's I believe, at Mike Herndon NFL, if you want to go let him know about it on Twitter. For the Caleb Murphy hype train. 2 years in a row now, he has led this scurrilous, fruitless campaign. You just gave your reason for why you have Weaver in over Caleb Murphy. Not to get too deep in the weeds, but my reason is because Weaver he's been good before and Caleb Murphy never has been. That's my primary reason, is that I've seen at one point in their career Weaver do some things in real games that matter and make some form of impact. With Caleb Murphy, I've just never seen it. And nothing against Caleb Murphy as a human being. It's nothing personal. I just don't think he's that good a ball player right now. And he continues to need to develop. So anyways, limited numbers at D-line and at edge allow for me to do the dumbest thing I've done in my 53. And that's keep 6 middle linebackers. I am self-aware of the fact that this is me just kind of wish casting it. I'm self-aware of the fact that this is likely not the number. I think it's far more likely they keep 5 or maybe even 4 middle linebackers than they keep 6. But I have them keeping 6. We know the 3 that are locks, and that's Jack Gibbons, Kenneth Murray, Chance Campbell. Those 3, they keep talking about Gibbons and Murray as the starters. They're getting the starter treatment. No mistaking that situation. And then Chance Campbell has been the best defender on the entire Titans team the last 2 weeks in camp and at practice, at practice and in the preseason games. So that's in stone. Those guys are locked in my opinion. Then you have the trio where things get interesting. Otis Reese, James Williams, Cedric Gray. You want to keep them all for very different reasons. With Otis Reese, he's the best of the 3 right now. Veteran, highest floor at the moment. With James Williams, you keep him because of the ceiling. He's a rookie. He is I think right now he has shown the highest ceiling flashes so far, and you're excited about what he can become as a 7th round draft pick. And then Cedric Gray, you don't keep him for anything he's done because he's not done anything. You keep him because he's a 4th-round draft pick. And when you scouted him in college, you were given enough reasons to draft him in the 4th round to like him. Like there's a lot to like there on tape. It's just been a while. So let's talk about this, JT. The odds are one of these guys doesn't stay. Who's your money on to end up getting cut, and why? I honestly don't have an answer yet in my head. I'm gonna think about it while you answer.
I'm so just torn on
What'd you do, by the way? Did you keep 6? Did you keep 5? What'd you do?
I kept 6, but then again, it's like those comments were pretty damning by Brian Callahan last week on Cedric Gray to the point where I feel like they
can't cut him.
I'm interested to see what they do with him. So he's on my list as that.
I think 6. He turns purple. I think he turns purple on my color coding list. I think that he ends up as
he turns purple.
He holds his breath until they keep him on the team. They say no, and he turns purple. No, I think he becomes a pup IR guy. In my gut, that's what I think is they find a list to put him on, and it may be a scuttled season. Like he may be a developmental, and that'll be very disappointing if that's the case. But I think that might be their solution because you cannot cut him.
The biggest thing is that as we've gone through here, right? The middle linebacker position is the one where I think they may make the most frustration in that they may find a way also to justify keeping Luke Gifford because of his special team prowess. Like you said with the Hassan Haskins, if you're not keeping Hassan Haskins, okay, you kind of need another guy who's your ace in the hole on special teams. And so is James that? I don't know. Could James Williams really be that guy who would be a surprise cut because we've talked him up for so long over these past couple of weeks here? But like Brian Callahan says, maybe Brian Callahan's timeline for James Williams to grow into that position is a lot faster than what we perceive James Williams' timeline as. Could he be the one with the odd man out because of Luke Gifford's ability on special teams? Now, I don't know, but I ultimately I'm still here with you. I'm Jack Gibbons, Kenneth Murray, Chance Campbell, Otis Reese, James Williams, Cedric Gray, but like I still feel kind of in my gut that they find a way to keep Luke Gifford because of that special teams.
Oh God, please don't. If they keep 5 or 6 linebackers and one of them is Luke Gifford, I'm gonna punch a hole.
I'm not saying I want it. I
know, but I hate to even put it out in the ether. That's
and so, but if I had my way with how they choose their linebackers, I'm with you that it is those 6. Most likely 5 because I think that they do something with Cedric Gray. Then again, like it's been a shoulder injury. Obviously, it's at a level of severity where it's kept him out for this long. Like I agree with you that he, if it's been out for this long, there is motivation to put him on a pup list and kind of start the season.
He needs
like
to
that.
be back this week. He needs to be back.
Yes, if he's not back, if he's not back tomorrow, that's
if he's not back tomorrow, I'm confident he's purple on this list. I like Kenneth says in the comments, feels like some injury pup hijinks are coming on. I agree. I think if he's not back out there tomorrow, then you can go ahead and pencil him in as purple on the list, which will be disappointing. And Scory Day in the comments saying whispers Reese outplayed Campbell last week. Yeah, I can get behind that. Brian Callahan said it himself. He had a very nice game. If Otis Reese hadn't gotten injured in that game, we maybe have a different conversation about who's linebacker 3 and 4. I probably would still lean Campbell, but that injury might put him back a little bit. It set him back in terms of missed time. And I think right now he's easily your linebacker 4 in terms of talent. So no debate there. Moving on to the cornerback position. I have them keeping the obvious 4. We've talked about how these 4 are significantly better than the rest of the 4. L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Roger McCreary, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. And then I have them keeping Gabe Jeudy-Lally, which I am excited and fine with, and Trey Avery, which bothers me in my soul, deep down within. But I do believe he will be on this team. I have them cutting Caleb Farley, Eric Garrer, Anthony Kendall, Robert Javier, and Tay Gowan. Did you keep 6, and who did you keep?
I kept 6. Begrudgingly, I kept Trey Avery. I don't know.
Do we have the exact same list so far, by the way, except for offensive line?
No. So offensive line is the big one. This is where I'm also going to deviate as well.
Good.
I'm keeping Eric Garrer Mostly
over
because over Gabe Judy Lally right now. And honestly, looking back at it, would I probably just keep Gabe Judy Lally for S and G's, over him? Probably. Kicks and gigs. Like, the reason I'm keeping Eric Gehrer is when you look at this list out, like, they're truly, like, the way they've been using Jarvis Brownlee as a mainly outside guy, as someone who they want to excel on the outside, shows me that that's where they feel his natural position is at right now. And so if Roger McCreary were to go down, they really don't have a option on the list to play that kind of nickel corner spot if you keep a Trey Avery and a Gabe Judy Lally. So that was kind of my reasoning to keep Eric Gehrer, also because I think out of those guys, between Trey Avery, Gabe Judy Lally, Eric Gehrer, all those guys, I think Eric Gehrer is the best corner, even though he is smaller and plays the nickel. Like, I think he's the best at that, like at his position. So that's why I'm keeping Eric Gehrer. And then, like you said, Trey Avery, Gabe Judy Lally, it's a toss up. Like, I put Trey Avery because, just like my throwing out there in the ether with Luke Gifford, they somehow find a way with Trey Avery. They know something clearly that we just don't, and they're seeing something that we're not, I guess. Like, that's my only rationale behind that.
I don't think they're seeing something that we don't. I don't think that's it. I think it's just that they trust him, and you're just begrudgingly fine with it. You know, it is what it is. You don't feel like you have somebody that is a confident vet option as your like. I don't know. I think they feel like he's a necessary evil. And evil is so strong. It's nothing against him personally. It's just I don't know. You get what I'm saying? Where they feel like they kind of need that role, and he fits that role, and they just wish he was better at that role.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And as John says in the comments, as your cornerback 6, it's not the worst thing, but you certainly would like better.
Well, and if Gabe Judy Lally is the guy they keep, I think that he's your cornerback 5, actually. If Eric Gehrer is the guy they keep, like JT thinks, then maybe that's the case. I don't know. Moving on to safety. I think this one's pretty easy. Honestly, I think they keep 4. The reason why I think they keep 4 is because every time we've talked about roster so far with Brian Callahan, he's used, I don't know if this is probably non-intentional, but he's used as his example, like when he talks about talent versus fitting needs on Monday, he literally said, well, do we need to, keep a 5th safety or go with a more talented guy? I think that they'll literally ask that question in the room and say, let's get the more talented guy. So I think they keep 4. I think they keep Amani Hooker and Quandre Diggs, your obvious starters. Jamal Adams, the other guy that's obvious because they went out and sought him out and brought him in. He's listed high on the unofficial depth chart. And then Elijah Molden, who I think is the obvious veteran choice, cutting Matthew Jackson, Keaton Ellis, Mike Brown, and Shaheem Carter. Is this the list that you had?
It is, but I do want to bring up an interesting point that we talk about this list of surprising guys who might get cut, knowing what we know about Elijah Molden's kind of fall down the depth chart. Is that a possibility? I mean, what? How
about I one up you? How about Jamal Adams, surprise cut candidate?
Ooh, that's an interesting take.
What have we? It's all baked in, right? We're not saying he makes the roster based on anything he's done out here at practice, or he's not even suited up for the games. What has he done to guarantee himself a spot? Now, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just saying the fact that he's not been back out there yet at practice, maybe he's not back to the shape they need him in at the rate at which they were hoping he would be. I think that's a possibility.
I think it's a possibility as well. Like, obviously, like the great unknown for us is the injury and status of these guys, and like 4 of these guys could go on a PUP or an IR eventually, like, and this all changes. I think I'll
nominate, by the way, the person I think if Adams or Molden somehow doesn't make the roster, I think Matthew Jackson's the obvious one. He continues to be the gunner in the I keep saying practice games, the preseason games, which are practice games.
They are practice games.
They sure are. I think he's the one. He would not. I mean, TD is always high on him. When I think Matthew Jackson, frankly, I think Tron Davenport.
Made a few plays. I mean, sure. he has 2 or 3 interceptions in practice. So
he's very clearly the 5th safety on this team. I just don't think that makes the cut. And then to the chagrin and surprise of everyone here for the specialists, I had them keeping Ryan Stonehouse, Morgan Cox, and Nick Folk. No, Braden Narveson. He did not unseat. Nick
Joke's
Folk,
on you. I have the Narwhal. Just kidding.
The Narwhal is on the team.
Yes.
So yeah, those are my 53. I'm assuming you have the same specialist. So really, we only disagreed on. I had Judy Lally and Duncan I had Judy Lawley and Latavia Simmons and Cole Spencer on the team. Instead, you had Eric Guerrer, Leroy Watson, and Garon Christian. So we really only disagreed on 3 guys. That's kind of surprising that it was that in lockstep. But I think that's reflective of the fact that, 1, we're geniuses, and 2, maybe more importantly, most of this roster is already pretty cut and dry. I don't think there's a whole lot of debates. Stoney requested it earlier. He said he needs full 17-man practice squad. So let me just go ahead and throw mine out there.
Before we do that, the comments here, Kenneth says, I think the biggest unknown, which is another one, is how many players maybe Rand Carthon goes after from next week's massive cutdown day.
Great point.
I think that's another interesting point that we will have to circle back on. And that's why we're kind of doing this episode now, because next week we just get to react to it and break that all down. So that'll be exciting. But like you said, we're going to be right, except for 3 spots. One of us will be right with those 3 spots. The other one will be wrong, but everything else.
And then we'll also maybe be wrong on some other things. We'll see.
Maybe.
And it says put Narveson on the team, cowards. Absolutely not. Can't make me do it. My practice squad is Braden Narveson. Sure. Why not keep the kid around? Matthew Jackson, safety, 2 cornerbacks in Caleb Farley and Eric Guerrer. No linebackers, because if you're keeping 6 on the active roster, we do not need a 7th linebacker out there at practice. 2 edge players in Thomas Rush and Caleb Murphy, much to the enjoyment of Mike and others that are big Caleb Murphy fans. I have Isaiah Eaton and Quentin Bohanna, the 2 guys competing for that last defensive line spot, being the 2 defensive linemen on the practice squad. Leroy Watson and John Njoku, I have making the practice squad as the lineman. Thomas Odukoya is your 17th guy, because he's going to unfortunately continue to toil in international designation exemption purgatory. I hope that eventually he gets to not do that, but for now, the math just makes more sense for them to keep him that way and get an extra practice squad guy. So Odukoya stays there. This might be wrong, but I have them keeping 4. Braden is trying to call me in the middle of the show. Braden, I'm on air. I'll talk to you in a minute, buddy. 4 wide receivers, and Kinsey, Phillips, Jackson, and Oliver. That's probably wish casting. I doubt it's all 4, but maybe. 1 running back in Hassan Haskins and 1 quarterback in Malik Willis. So what similar, different? What was yours looking like?
So I have a few things different. I'll go in the opposite way of you. I'll start with Malik Willis. He is my practice squad quarterback. Running back, I kept Jabari Small because I don't know.
Sure, why not? It's a coin flip. You're not offending me by that at all. I don't care.
I kept 4 receivers just like you.
Okay.
Like Mason Kinsey, I think I kept the same 4. Bryce Oliver, Hive, stand up.
Sam Sheney. That's tough on them.
It's not, but then again, how dare you? It's Sam Sheney, not Sam Sheney.
I'm so sorry. I didn't find it out until we were in the stadium on Saturday night, because they kept saying Sheney, and I was like, look at these idiots in the press box. I don't even know the name of the guy. And then I checked the pronunciation guide, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm wrong.
It is Sheney.
That's so tough. I'm sorry, Sam Sheney.
Mason Kinsey, Kyrus Jackson, Bryce Oliver, and Kyle Phillips. I'm keeping him. Thomas Odukoya, like you, is that bonus player that is in purgatory. I put a star next to him. I've been keeping 3 offensive linemen here. I have him keeping Cole Spencer and John Njoku for those guys, the development guys, and Latavia Simmons is a guy they can pull up if need be. I have them keeping just 1 defensive lineman outside of the 5 on there in Isaiah Eaton. I have them keeping Caleb Murphy, and then I have them keeping quite a few cornerbacks in Matthew Jackson, Gabe Judy-Lally, Shaheem Carter, and Anthony Kendall. The biggest one I think that is not on my list is Caleb Farley, which I think is an interesting conversation considering that he is hurt. What they do with him, is obviously he's had to work through a lot of things, but at some point, if he continues to be injured, it's like, how much is it really worth? Obviously, being that former first round pick. And then I have them keeping the Narval as my final spot to make 17.
Well, we stretched a full hour out of that. Unbelievable. So cool. Those are our 53-man rosters. We will maybe publish them somewhere by the end of the week. We'll find out next Tuesday. Like we said, Tuesday at 3 p.m. local time here in Nashville will be the final cut down time. Be checking social media if you care about these things earlier, because throughout the day we'll be hearing guys that were cut or that were confirmed with the practice squad and therefore not on the main roster. All of those things we'll be finding out as we go. So look forward to that. Look forward to this Thursday. JT and I will be doing a show at the same time, 4 p.m. local time, recapping the last two practices of training camp that are happening tomorrow morning and Thursday morning over at the Titans facility, right before they head on over to the Saints Stadium, which is called the Superdome. quite famously. I probably should have gone with that instead of the Saints Stadium. The Superdome is where they'll be playing this weekend at 1 p.m. local time on Sunday. So adjust your preseason calendars. We get a Sunday 1 p.m. game, and then we are on to the regular season. Anything else, JT? I feel like I'm missing something. We got everything? We good to go today?
Let me see. Joey says, are we doing a hot read fantasy league again? Yes.
We will.
We'll do that.
TBD
We'll do the details in the dead week. How about that? We'll do an announcement during the dead week between the last preseason game.
Yeah.
And
let's get this game out of the way, and the next week we'll talk about it. So stay tuned. Okay. Until Thursday.
Other than that, I hope Stoney cleaned up his barf on his desk for me.
Yeah, that sounded messy. I hope that wasn't too bad. Okay.
So,
all right. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, doing all of those things, following us on social media at Hot Read Pod on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Until Thursday, we will see you then.